I'm not used to recording here. Okay. I'm going to go over the exercises briefly. I told you that chapter 1 is really not important to me, okay? You do not have to know how to turn them into syllables. And as a matter of fact, I noticed when you emailed me your homework, I thought, oh, shoot, they didn't really have to do that. And exercise 1, it said, using the rules for syllabication and accent, write them out. You didn't have to do that. So just blanket statement. If you are told in this book, write out the syllables and accent marks, you don't have to do that. Okay? But kudos to you for anybody else who did it. But I'm not going to go over that because I don't think that's as important. So let's take a look at exercise 2. It said find the stem. So I just want to very, very briefly recap what you did this last week. For some of you, if you've done Latin before, this is just very elementary and easy. But if you haven't, or it's been a while, it's never a bad idea to review, okay? We learned 5 words. And I will just use amo as our sample word. What does amo mean?
Hello.
Love. And we learned that verbs have 4 principal parts. Amo, amari, amawi. Remember the V makes a W sound? Amatus. Okay, ama, yes. They say tum. It doesn't matter. I'll do what they say in the book. Some books say tus, and we'll find out why later. So we have 4 principal parts. And once you've learned one, we also learned that you've learned most all of them. Amo, amari, amawi, amatum. Labaro, laborari, labarawi, labaratum. Can you see this? Okay. And we also took a special look at the second principal part. The second principal part is called the infinitive. We call it that in English too. To love, in this case. To do whatever. And we use infinitives. To swim is my favorite sport. I just used an infinitive. And I told you that we can find the stem of a verb by going to that second principal part and taking away the RE. And in exercise 2, it said, find the stem for each of the verbs that you learned. Well, they showed you in your book that the stem of amo is ama. And that the stem of canto, I sing, is canta. What's the stem of laboro?
Labora.
Labora. Let me just make sure everybody knows what I'm doing, okay? So the principal parts of laboro. Laboro, laborari, laborawi, laboratum, right? I go to the second principal part, laborare, and I take away the RE, labora. Make sense? What's the principal part of nawigo, or the stem of nawigo? Nawiga. Because the principal parts are now we go, now we gari, now we gawi, now we gatum. So if the second principal part, I'm sorry, I'm writing all over the place, is navigare, I take away the RE and I have naviga. How about opugno or opugno?
Opinio.
Opugna. Are we good? Does that make sense? Okay, so that was exercise 2. Another important thing that the second principal part does for us is it tells us what conjugation a verb is in. Let me get rid of some of my mess here. When we look at the infinitive, we see the last 3 letters are A, R, E. And if you notice, if you look on page 10 in your book, if you look at the principal parts that you learned, the second principal part of every single one of these words ends in A-R-E. Every verb with a second principal part that ends in A-R-E is what we call first conjugation. And I believe they gave you a definition, yes. A conjugation, it says on page 11, is a group of verbs that share similar patterns for their endings. It's a group of verbs that all use the same endings. For example, we learned this week to conjugate, to give all the endings to amo. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatus, amant. Notice I took the stem. See that ama, 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 ama? And I stuck endings on. All the verbs with the ARE ending in first conjugation, they just do the same thing. It's just a group of verbs that all do the same thing when we conjugate them, when we take them through their endings. Does that make sense? There are other verbs we're going to learn whose second principal part ends in different letters. But whenever you see the ARE, you say, oh, it's just like amo, it's just like canto, laboro, it does the same thing. I find the same stem and I stick the same endings on. If you know how to use one, you know how to use them all. That's the great thing about Latin, right? So the infinitive tells you what conjugation it's in. And in exercise 3, it said, following the example of amari, conjugate the verbs cantare and navigare. So you should have done something, I was going to say something like this. No, exactly like this is what you should have done, not like it. Canto, cantas, cantat, cantamus, cantatus, cantant. Did everyone get that for exercise 3? So we did. And then you should, can I just say, now we go? What you should have written, now we go, now we gas, now we got, now we gamus, now we gatus, now we gant. That's how we conjugate those. And we would do the same thing to laboro, excuse me, and whatever the other word, I'll put it up, the other word you learned. Okay? And remember what this means. I love, you love, he, she, or it loves, we love, you all love, they love. That's what those endings tell us. O, S, T, mus, tis, nt. That's what they tell us. That means I'm doing it, you are doing it, he, she, or it is doing it, we are doing it, y'all are doing it, more than one you, or they are doing it. Do you see my endings? O, S, T, mus, tis, nt. But I'm sorry if I'm belaboring this, but you got it? We got that? Okay. We also learned, and they mentioned on page 12, that this is a verb in the present tense. It's happening right now. And in English, we have more than one way to say that. We can say, I love. That means I'm doing it right now. We can say, I am loving. That also means I'm doing it right now. We can also say, I do love. We don't walk around saying, I do love very often. I sure do love pizza, maybe something like that. But we often use that when we ask a question. Do you love pizza? We often start a question with the do. But that word is all 3 of these. right? You can translate it any of those ways. So in exercise 4, they actually asked you to translate several words. Would someone like to tell me what? I'm just going to write them on the board, okay? I'm going to take this away. It's way up the middle of the board. The first word was cantamus. How would you translate cantamus? That was number 1 on exercise 4.
Said sing and shout, but the the ending most is we, so we shall.
We sing.
We sing. Right?
Using clemo.
Right.
So no, we know canto means sing, and mus means we. We sing. We could say we are singing. We do sing. Those are all okay. How about the next one was, oh, this was a tricky one. Opugnasne. Do you remember what the nay means? Did I even talk about that? I botched last week's, but this week, now I'm good. I'll do it right this time. Where did they show you that? Help me. Where does it talk about the nay? Oh, it says, okay, it's easier to just hold the book up. Page 12. To change a Latin verb from a declarative, making a statement, to an interrogative, asking a question, simply add the suffix nay. So here's what we're going to do. We're first going to do this. What would opugnas mean?
You're attacking.
You are attacking, or you attack, or you do attack. That's
so
fine.
would it be, are you attacking?
Yes. If I do this, I turned it into a question. Are you attacking? Do you attack? Does that make sense? That's what the nay does at the end. I'm assuming, see, I made an assumption that you would go home and you would read the chapter as you did the exercises, but then I realized I didn't actually say to you. Now I've told you what's in the chapter. Now you go home and read the chapter in between the exercises, but I didn't actually say it. And then when I got home, I realized, oh, you might just go look up the exercises and just do them without reading the chapter, because I didn't tell you to. And if you didn't read it, see, you wouldn't be disobeying. I didn't tell you. So next week, I will tell you. So yes, it just turns it into a question. How about the next one? Known, I know we did talk about the known. Navigant. What does just the navigant mean, this part?
They sail.
They sail. So, add that on. Do you know what the known means?
They do not sail?
They do not sail. It just means not. They do not sail. And the last one was, oh, it's not the last one, laboratus. Laboratus.
Y'all work.
Y'all work. Or y'all are working. Or y'all do work. Ooh, there's another nay. Now we got nay. Remember? Don't worry about the nay. How about now we got?
He, she, or it is not sailing. Or are. Darn, it's hard.
Well, try it without the nay first.
All right.
That makes it easier.
He, she, or it is sailing.
He, she, or it is sailing.
So.
Is.
Yes. You have to put the helping verb at the beginning, don't you? Is he sailing? It helps also if you don't do it like he, she, or it, because that you can just pick one if you want to. So see, the t tells us it's he, she, or it, and the now we got part tells us it's sailing. One last one. Non opugno.
I do not fight. Do not attack.
Yes, this means I attack. The O means I do it. I attack. I do not attack. Right? We got it? Okay. I'm going to rely on you guys. especially because so many of you are new to me. If you're not getting it, you have to, like I always told them last year, it's like going to the doctor. If you don't tell the doctor where it hurts, like you can't help, right? You have to tell me, I don't understand how to do that. Or I don't know what that means. I don't know how you're getting that answer. You need to tell me. But if you don't, I'm going to assume we're okay. All right, then in exercise 5, they wanted us to do the opposite. They wanted us to put from English into Latin. So how do I say I sail in Latin?
Navigo.
Now we go. How about you, one you, do not work? How about just give me you do work? Oh, I took away our.
Labor. That was a harder time with the ending.
Okay.
Laboris.
Okay, so labora is the stem for work, and it was one you, right?
Yes, additional.
Laboras, you work,
Non.
and then non laboras, you do not work. Let me put these back here. Didn't mean to. The HSI just means he, she, it, and it means I'm lazy. I don't like to write them on that. How about are they attacking? How about just tell me how to say they are attacking? Don't make it a question. They are attacking.
Oh, Oppugnant. I can't pronounce it.
Yeah. So oh yes, opugna. That's our stem. Opugnant. And then how do I turn it into a question? Opugnant. Ne. How about she loves?
Amat.
Amant. We have our stem, and we have the she ending, the he, she, or it ending. How about we do sing?
Cantamus.
Yes, cantamus. And we have one left. You, plural, or y'all, are not sailing. How about y'all are sailing?
Navigatis.
Yes, navigatus, and then not.
Non.
Non, here, that's supposed to be over there. Non navigatus, okay? So hopefully, in the best possible world, what you guys did is you wrote all these out, all right? And so this is what we're gonna do each week. When you do the exercises, we're just gonna kind of do a little review to make sure everybody's on board. But if you're using the workbook, that you can get to online, the extra answers are in the back of that workbook. So I'm not gonna go over the extra answers, but you can do that, and then you can know right away at home if you're doing them right. That would be the great thing about doing the workbook. Remember that, if you don't mind me just grabbing your stuff. The areas in the workbook that are shaded are extras, just extra practice. Those answers are in the back of the workbook where it says answers. But the other ones we'll go over in class, okay, each week. Let's take a look at chapter 3. Does anybody have any questions about how this works? Sounds like everybody's okay, all right? So that is present tense. Let's take a look at a couple more tenses. But first of all, turn with me to page 15 in your book. And we have a new saying. They're opening each of these chapters with a saying. And I think I actually mentioned this one last week, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is also on our seal, the seal of the United States. We learned Annuit Queptus last week. He has favored our undertaking? Is that, I'm suddenly blanking out, yes. And so Novus Ordo Seclorum, new order of the ages. They really believed that the founding of the United States was like a new era in history. And it really sort of was a new republic where we were going to experiment with people making their own laws when most of Europe was kings and queens, right? They weren't making their own laws. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a country where we choose people to make our own laws for us and we vote on them. And so it was like a new order of the ages for them. So it's our third saying. We learned Annuit Queptus, he has favored our undertaking. E pluribus unum, which is on our money, one out of many. Because out of many people coming from many different places, we make one country, and it novus ordo seclorum, new order of the ages. And the first thing you will see on on page 15 is more words. And I am looking at them, and I see something that makes me rejoice. And it is, they all have principal parts exactly like the ones you've already learned. If you just learn what they mean, you already know the principal parts. Ambulo, ambulari, ambulawi, ambulatum. It means walk. And I think, can't prove this, but I feel like ambulance. I know the word ambulance is from ambulo, but it's like it walks for you when you can't walk. It takes you somewhere. It does the walking for you because presumably you're hurt or sick or something and they transport you to the hospital. Perambulator, they also give you the derivative perambulator. That's a fancy name for a stroller, like a baby stroller. They used to call it a perambulator because you walk around with it. And it walks for the baby, right? Because the baby can't. Although sometimes kids that can walk get put in strollers because they walk really slow, you know, and you just don't want to wait for them, right?
Or they keep running ahead.
Or they keep running away and you can strap them in and keep them under control. We had a real cheap stroller and one of my kids learned to like boot itself out and then it could get on its feet and then walk around with the stroller on its rear end, which was not so helpful. It wasn't very fast though, you know, it was pretty slow walking with the stroller attached. Okay, next word, aro, arare, arawi, aratum. Aro means plow. Arable is our derivative. I talked about this last year, John, too. I think we learned aro. Arable means it can be farmed. Arable land is land that can be farmed. Mountains are not arable land. It's hard to farm a mountain, right? It's rocky, it's steep. And if you've ever read the book Charlotte's Web, the Ferns family, Fern's last name is Arable. They're farmers. And I don't think that's a mistake that E.B. White called them the arable family because they plow the land. They're farmers. And if you hadn't read Charlotte's Web, you should because it's a fabulous book. It has nothing to do with Latin. Habito, habitari, habitawi, habitatum. It means live in or dwell, and it looks like the word habitat. This is very easy to remember. A habitat is where an animal lives, right? Because habito means live. Porto, portari, portawi, portatum means carry. If something is portable, you can carry it. And my ever favorite, and when I used to teach the little kids, they just rejoiced in this. And maybe, Luke, maybe you remember, porta potty. Remember talking about porta potties? Did we learn porto with you? Mm-hmm. Maybe not. A porta potty is a carryable potty, right? It's a toilet they can put wherever they want. They can move it from place to place. Unlike the toilet in your house, which is not portable, probably, at all. What?
Probably.
Probably. Hopefully not, because if it is, it means it's not attached to the sewer system. We want that attached to the sewer system. Next word is rogo, rogari, rogawi, rogatum. It means ask. If you interrogate someone, interrogate, it means you ask them a bunch of questions. Because rogo means ask. Right? Like the police interrogate you, they shine the light in your eyes in the movie, on TV shows. I don't know if they actually do this in person, you know, if they arrest you and they put you in a room and they shine a light in your eyes. And, where were you on the night of August 15th or something like that? I don't know. Maybe I watched too many of that kind of show. Next word is regno or regno. You can say it either way. Regno, regnari, regnawi, regnatum. It means to rule, like be a king. And we get the word reign and regnant, which is someone who's ruling, from regno. And last one, woko, wokari, wokawi, wokatum. Wokawi is fun to say with the two V's, wokawi. Call. Vocal, right? Your vocal cords, when they vibrate in your throat, you use those to call, make a sound. Your vocation is your calling, what you are called to do with your life. Whether it's, you know, we usually refer to it as entering the ministry or a religious order or something like that. But your vocation doesn't have to be, it can be any job that you feel like God has called you to do. You're called to be a teacher, or you're called to be a mother, or whatever. That's your vocation. It's your calling. And down below that, we learn two more conjunctions. Actually, we haven't learned any conjunctions yet. These are joining words. Et means and. The well-known phrase et cetera. We would say et cetera in here. We usually abbreviate it like this. Right? Have you ever seen this? Everybody's seen, or somebody's used the word et cetera. It means and others. Literally, it means and others. So if I'm listing who was in my Latin class, Luke, John, Caden, sorry, you're going to be an et cetera. But an Ava, missing Ava, at any time, and others, and others. I'm leaving some of the list out. So et means and out, A-U-T, out, means or. Okay, we good? So the first assignment for the week is we need to memorize those. But really, all you have to memorize is what they mean. And I'm sorry, porto and habito, these are really easy because they look like what they mean. Voco, regno, it really isn't that hard. Especially if you're familiar with any of the derivatives like interrogative sentence or interrogation. Well, remember. So if you've got cards at home, go home, write these on one side, Latin on one side, English on the other, and practice them. But don't stop practicing the ones from chapter 2. Because we don't want to just learn them and then forget them, because they're going to keep giving you to you. And when you start making sentences, they're going to just keep throwing them at you. So you want to keep remembering them. And what I do, I have Greek, because I'm working on my Greek. I have cards, and when I miss one, I put it in a separate pile, and then I put it back on top. I just go through my cards. Whereas you guys don't have very many cards yet, or don't have very many, but my stack's pretty big. But so I don't do them all every day, So I take some, and then if I miss one, I just put it on top, so to make sure I do it the next day. That's how I like to do it. Okay, so those are your new words. What are we going to do with our new words? We're going to form 2 new tenses. I guess I could just use your eraser, couldn't I? Don't know why I felt like I needed to use paper towel. So you have learned, last week we learned how to do the present tense. Things that are happening right now. We're going to learn 2 new tenses. We're going to learn future tense and the imperfect tense. I will talk about imperfect and why it's imperfect shortly. But let's look at future first. What does it mean for something to be in the future? This is a very easy question.
Has not happened
It
yet.
hasn't happened yet. We're looking forward to it. And how do we usually, so if amo means I love, how would I phrase it in English to say I haven't done it yet?
I will love.
We use the word will. In English, we use the word will. So in the future would be I will love. And so every time we use future tense in English, I'm trying to think of a time we don't, and I can't think of a time that we don't use the word will. And we use it for all of them. I will, you will, he, she, or it will, we will, you all will. It's the same will. That never changes. Here's how we do it in Latin. I feel like I just looked at this and then I just promptly forgot what time it was. Just ignore it.
I saw what was memorized from last year.
Yes. We take the stem. Remember, we found out how to find the stem. The stem is the infinitive minus the RE. So I'm just going to write the stem of amo. We take the stem and I'm going to write the stem 6 times. We take the stem and we stick these endings on. Bo, bis, bit, bimus, bitus, bunt. bo bispit, bimis bitis bunt. Notice something. It still has the O, S, T, mus, tis, nt. It still has it. So if you learned it for the present tense, you still can look at the end of these and you can tell if it's I or we or they. But almost all of them except the first one, have this bit. And that tells you that it's future. Except this one doesn't have a bit. I just like to memorize bo bispit, bimis bitis bunt. Because it's kind of easy to memorize. Bo bispit, bimis bitis bunt. And that's your future endings. Whenever you see that, it's now future. I will love. You will love. He, she, or it will love. We will love. Y'all will love. They will love. Does that make sense? And we just, with a wave of our pen, we have turned them all into future. So they're going to tell you about that in this section. Now, imperfect. See, the weird thing is you just wonder about that name, imperfect. It makes it sound like there's something wrong with it, doesn't it? Because when we use the word perfect, what do we usually mean? Like if you say something is perfect, what do you mean?
Completed, done.
Well,
like,
you know the real answer. But what do we usually mean? If I say that pizza was perfect, what do I mean?
Nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's no problems. That's what we usually mean by perfect. You're right. You're just jumping ahead of me. But in language, in Latin, perfect means completed or finished. And I bet you learned this before in Latin too. It means it's completely done. As a matter of fact, it's the same word. The Greek word means something similar in the New Testament, where it says, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." It means be completed. Become the person you were meant to be. And that means a person in God's likeness, a person like God. That's what he's saying. He doesn't mean never make a mistake, because he realizes we're human beings and we're going to make a mistake. For Jesus to say be perfect would just be kind of cruel if he meant never, ever, ever do anything wrong. But be complete, be fully formed, that we can do. We'll spend our whole lives doing it, but we can work towards that. So imperfect means not finished. It's something that we do over and over again. For example, I know I'm using the same examples because I'm not very creative. If I said, I ran the Bix, and it was so miserable, I'm never doing it again. All right, I ran it once, and it was awful. I almost died. I didn't run the Bix. I'm making this whole story up. I did it once, and I'm done with it, and I'm never doing it again. That would be perfect tense. It's completed. Not going to do that again. But if I said this, I ran the Bix every year for 10 years. So I did it over and over again. I wasn't ever really done with it. You know what I mean? Because I just went back the next year and I did it again. That's what they mean by imperfect. Sometimes they translate it, I kept on doing it. I used to do it. You know, the idea is I did it over and over. But more often, they translate it with the helping verb was. So future is will. I will do it. Imperfect is I was doing it. We translate it that way just to make a distinction between I did it and it was over, or I was doing it. I was in the habit of doing it. And we do the same thing. We find our stem. And we stick another set of endings. Bomb, boss, bot, bombus, botus, bont. Notice again, we don't have the O, unfortunately, but we have the S, T, mus, tis, nt, same endings. But this time instead of BI, we have BA. Bomb, boss, bot, bombus, botus, bont. And this means I was loving, you were loving, he, she, or it was loving, We were loving, y'all were loving, they were loving. Right? Make sense? And once you've learned that, you can do it to all the verbs. That's the wonderful thing about it. So this is all laid out for you in your book, there in chapter 3. And what I would like you to do this week, first of all, you do need to memorize your new words. And memorize bo bisbit, bisbit is fun. Bom ba spa, bom ba spa, which is pretty easy. You probably memorize that in an afternoon and not forget it. Then what I want you to do, and so I'll be explicit this time, sit down when you're ready tomorrow to sit down and do your Latin. Start at the beginning, look over your words, and then it says exercise 1, divide them into syllables, and do the accents. Do you have to do that? You do not have to do that because I said we are not going to worry about dividing in syllables and the accent marks unless I tell you it's an important work. Okay? So you already see, it's already looking good because you can just skip exercise 1. Then read section 9, tense. I want you to read that to yourself. Look at the endings and then do exercise 2. And then the next day, read and then do the next exercise. It's probably, I don't know if it's divided up that way in the workbook. You could follow along in the workbook. But read the portions in between. I should have already told you everything that's in between, but then it will remind you. It will remind you of what I said. And I just want to point out on page 18. Everybody come back to page 18 with me. Exercise 5 is a chart. And so yes, John, there is our charts, but they're not like those interminable Memory Press charts. I just want to make sure this makes sense to everyone. They give you a verb, and then they ask you, what tense is it? Well, you know 3 tenses now: present, future, and imperfect. You can abbreviate it if you want. They put imp for imperfect. I don't even care if you just put present, imperfect, future for right now. Later on we're going to have another P, but for right now we could do that. Then it says, what person is it? Do you remember what we mean by person? Isabella, tell me.
Like he, she, it, they, we.
Mm-hmm. And so we have 3 choices for person: first, second, or third. What is first person?
I'm talking to you.
Yes. Yes, and so it's the first line. I'm talking, well, no, I guess I'm talking to you would be second person. First person would be, I am talking about myself or ourselves, I or we. Second person would be, I am talking to you. And third person would be, I am talking about someone else, he, she, they. So we have first, second, third person. And then they ask you, what number is it? We have 2 choices. Is it singular or is it plural? Right? And then they ask you to translate it. So let's do one of these together, just to finish off. So I'm not going to give you, actually, no, I'm going to go up that's not on there. Let's do a word you've already learned. Let's do laboratus. What tense is it? Is it present tense or future tense or
That would
imperfect?
be present.
It's present because it doesn't have bo, bis, bit, and it doesn't have bomb, ba, spot. So I would write it's present tense. What person is it? Is it first? It's second person because it's a you.
Plural.
And what number is it? It's plural because there's more than one. And then how would I translate it?
Y'all are working.
Y'all are working. Does that make sense? So that's what they want you to do with that chart. I am hoping that they have some of those in the workbook. I'm not going to print out the workbook every week to look at it, but if they do, then check the ones that are extra, and then you'll know that you're doing it correctly. We will go over all of these. And actually, exercise 6 has you do some more of them. They just don't have a chart. It says identify the person, number, and tense, then translate. So that's all they mean. Is it present, future, or imperfect? Is it first, second, or third? Is it singular or plural? And what's the translation? That's all they want you to do. On page 19, they have what their let's talk, their practice, getting you to try to use your spoken Latin. Although I found out there's a place where you can go for a whole weekend and they speak nothing but Latin. It sounds horrifying, but I kind of want to do it because I think my Latin would get a lot better. But I'm scared to death. So we learned last week, if you look on page 19, cujus est numeri. That means what number is it? Well, you can probably figure out. Singulariter est means it is singular. Pluraliter est means it is plural. Cujus est personae, what person is it? Est primae personae, est secundae personae, est tertiae personae. And cujus est temporis, what tense, what time is it? There's some new ones. Est praesentis, it's present. Est imperfecti, I'm hoping you can see that means it's imperfect. Est futuri, it's future. If you want to practice saying the questions in Latin and giving the answers, which I think they have you do in the workbook. Okay? So, work vobisbit, bombasbat, right? And your new words. And go through the exercises and read the chapter to yourself, but there shouldn't be anything in it that pops up that we haven't already talked about today. It'll just be a good review. Are we good? All right. Thank you, guys. You may be dismissed. I know, the time goes really fast. I feel like